Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining us today. We have a very special roundtable discussion. This one is on Ukraine 2002, because as you know, we have seen a change in reality, and in the sense that we have not seen conventional war in Europe in quite some time, in quite some years. We are very honored to be joined by our esteemed V.A.C. council members. We have three gentlemen from the Ukraine who are joining us tonight. Navry Sosan, Bogdan Yatsenko, and Maxim Kharkiv. Sorry if I butchered your names. My apologies. But at the same time, thank you for joining us, and please feel free to correct me on that. We're going to center this discussion initially around, of course, Ukraine and the situation here. Our gentlemen are freedom fighters, as they are soldiers during the day and freedom fighters for cannabis during the night. So many of us have served in the military, but we didn't necessarily have to be activists at night. So this is a unique time in history, and we're very honored to be joined by these gentlemen today. So I will start off with our first question, and I will just kind of circulate through the three of you. With the Russian troops massing on your border, and with the Russia repeatedly threatening invasion over the years and it not happening, we were curious about the mindset of the average Ukrainian citizen at the time of the invasion. What were you thinking leading up to the invasion? Bogdan, would you like to start?
Yeah, sure. Thanks, Guy, for this discussion. I think that will speak over a lot of things that should have to be spoken about. Yeah, regarding your question, yeah, the Russia has been threatening with its invasion for quite a period, like starting from 2014. So in 2014, it was pretty scary, but it not the like the whole mood. The story was not going about the invasion of the whole country, but like the last maybe year or half, it has become pretty scary. But actually, frankly speaking, like in my point of view, most of people of Ukraine got used to it and like uh, lived their everyday lives normally, just knowing that nothing will happen because there were so many threats before and nothing happened. And like most of people understand that it would be so stupid and irrationally to like for Russia to launch an invasion, a whole-scale invasion. And so me personally, I did not believe it will really happen until I saw the president's Putin declaring the war at 5 a.m. the next day when all happened. So it's like I thought that this is like that Putin and the whole Russia should be living in the parallel universe to some, I don't know, so crazy things. Yeah,
Thank you,
maybe.
Bogdan. Nazarili. Nazarili, sorry.
Yeah, Nasari. Thank you for an opportunity to speak with you and to speak also globally. I would say that really the last year or half of a year, people started to understand that there's gonna be a war. But this is actually something that goes beyond your imagination. So even if you understand that there is going to be a war, you refuse this thought actually. So for till the last moment, we were arguing with each other if there's going to be a war. And actually, just the day before the war started, I've been spending time with two of my friends, and one of them was convincing us that the war is not going to start, that it's impossible, that it's going to be then the Third World War, and so on. And after I talked to him and I said, like, you made a mistake, and he said, like, yeah, because I was trying to think rationally, and this is something completely different, you know. Now we actually try to more trust our intuition and not rational things, and it actually, I think that it's something that saved Ukraine, because it's not really rational, you know, to oppose a huge country and a huge amount of techniques, being while you are a small country in you, well, big country but small if to compare it to Russia. But we this belief that we need this victory actually made changed the situation completely. So now we really like are a bit like a mad maybe, but we see the reality how it is and just believe what we do and hope for the victory.
Thank you. Maxime, from your perspective.
Yeah, just wanted to echo the words of gratitude. Just happy to speak and to voice my opinion. Yeah, basically it all started in 2014. That before that, there was huge pro-Russian sentiment among our compatriots. Like before that, a lot of people wanted to be in closer economic ties with Russia and stuff. But since 2014, like the civil society just changed and moved in another direction because of war. But for your question, how that felt for regular Ukrainian, well, those 8 years were a long time, and like if in 2014-15 the society mobilized to kind of fight the aggression to defend Ukraine in the Donbas, then when it become sort of frozen conflict, a lot of people just like get used to that idea that it's something happening on the east of Ukraine. Crimea is gone de facto, and like you could just go on with your life. And yeah, actually 1 year ago it started to escalate, and it also, if we look at the history of the what happened in Ukraine that time, the new president was elected, and like Zelensky, who is currently sitting in office, and like the first maybe a year, he wasn't like a professional policymaker. He didn't have any political experience, but that time, and he was thinking that it is possible to make some deal with Putin, like to resolve Donbass and like to achieve long-lasting peace deal or something. And he was willing to do some sort of compromises. Maybe even Ukrainian society wasn't ready for that. And then after a while, he just understood that Putin doesn't want to have peace. He wants to have whole Ukraine. And that's when we realized that we will probably face a war. For me personally, maybe a week before. I'm sorry, but I don't remember what was the exact date of your birthday. We were having like, you know, a birthday party, and like, and the main topic of that was like, is Russia going to invade? It was like, I mean, days before the war, and it was surreal. Like the main topic of birthday party, which was supposed to be like, you know, fun evening, was like what to do, and yeah, we got scared. Like, I mean, like we didn't know that Russians were so bad at war at that time, because like they had massive troops. But yeah, like for me, it was clear that some escalation is going to happen. I wasn't sure if like they will want to do like full scale or maybe some re-escalation on Donbass. But yeah, the tensions began like maybe in November. Like a lot of, pretty much the whole feed was about the war, and like people felt that people started to join territorial defense forces, start to prepare for the war. Well, though you cannot be prepared for that, I guess.
No, there's no real preparation for war, and even for soldiers who are trained for it, the realities of what you experience and what you train for are completely different realities. Again, I'd like to thank our guests for joining us tonight from the Ukraine. We will go on over next to Councilmember Wade Laughter, who has a next question. Wade.
Yeah, thank you, Chen. And couldn't agree more with your statement about there's nothing that prepares one for war. And there's a lot of things going on in our world today. Your resistance to this invasion is inspiring. But as veterans, we know better than most folks how horrific the price being paid for that experience you're having. So my question is this. When the collapse of the USSR happened, Ukraine was a place that held a number of the nuclear weapons that Russia had at that time. And part of the promises that were made to Ukraine when this was happening was that we would keep you safe from threat, and in the way that nuclear weapons might have prevented Russia from invading you now. So my question to you basically is, do you feel betrayed or let down by the greater world, particularly NATO, the European Union, or the United States? And of course, I'm sure you feel let down and betrayed by Russia. So I'll stop there. It just seems like you guys kind of got screwed, to be honest. And I'll stop it. Thanks, Yachan.
Bogdan, we'll start with you, and we'll just continue through your brothers.
Okay, thanks. Yeah, there was Ukraine held a third largest nuclear arsenal after the Soviet Union collapsed, and there has been a Budapest memorandum in 1994 where Ukraine agreed to relinquish its nuclear arsenals, given all the warheads to Russia for decommissioning. And there were four countries who signed it and 2 countries who agreed but not signed. These were Ukraine, Russia, the United States, Great Britain, and did not sign but agreed France and China. So there were like security assurances that should be provided in case the territorial integrity and sovereignty of the Ukraine would be somehow in the danger. So that's why this is like a very massive question, not only dealing like does Ukraine or does like every citizen of Ukraine feel betrayed or not. It's more complicated questions because we're dealing with like a world nuclear war here. So if the world community will not stop like Russia and will allow Russia to invade Ukrainian territory, like any part of the territory, then this will be a precedent for other countries to do the same. And also this does not discourage countries from disarming, and like more countries will seek how to attain nuclear weapon, there will be more nuclear weapon in the world. And in general, like the possibility of a nuclear war increases, which I don't think that every one of us wants to see. So like, this is huge.
Thank you. Thank you for your thoughts. Nazari.
Yeah, thanks. Well, I can say that back to 2014, there was a huge disappointment actually from Ukrainian citizens about the reaction from the West, which we had during the war, which started back in the days. So for sure, there was, especially after the revolution, the Maidan revolution we had, and the support we had from the Europe, and everybody were again talking about Ukrainian so positively. It was pretty disappointing that when Ukraine started to communicate about European integration, we had answers that it's not on time. So the potentials of Ukraine to enter European Union is in 2030. Or 35. So it was a first disappointment, and probably the second one was when the West made a very soft sanctions against Russia. So probably what the reaction we've got from the West right now should have been applied already back in the days. And this is something, and what we see, what we have to pay for this, trying to deal with Russia friendly. So the third disappointment probably was when we understood also that that countries that guarantees our fight for our sovereignty, for our territory, like France or Germany, are actually selling weapons to Russia after 2014. And also that such countries as Germany, they do not, they start even, they straighten and make a bigger economical cooperation with Russia, building Nord Stream 2, which was a very heavy punch to our economy for sure. And it was also, such kind of reaction from the West leaded to the war which we have right now. Because if you feed the terrorist with the money, and if you do not deal with them as with terrorists, they just start to move forward, and that's what we have right now. And also it was a disappointment when everybody understood that there would be a war. Only a few countries started to give us weapon, and we really appreciate United States and also United Kingdom and other countries that started to give us the weapon even before the war started. So yeah, that's what I think.
Thank you very much. Maxim.
Yeah, I agree with what my friend said, but just to add a couple of things. Well, of course, there is sort of betrayal. Like I feel like that we've been betrayed, especially by European countries, like due to economic reasons. Well, it's obvious that some countries, not the same names, like prefer their economic wealth over like lives of Ukrainians, and they fooled themselves that you can you could have Russia as the partner which will be predictable, which like would respect human rights. And like in 2014, the response from the West was really soft. we have to, on the West defense, we have to understand that like Putin only recognized that those like green men at that time, green men without any like signs, they were Russians. He, like, the annexation happened in March 2014, and he only like officially declared that those were Russian forces in September. So like, and like in the east, Donetsk and Luhansk People's Republic were separatists. Well, and they apparently found the tanks in I don't know where in. Where did they get the tanks? Like it was obvious for the whole world that it was like Russia's seizing Crimea and supporting like separatists who, by the way, shot MH17 with like pretty advanced air defense system. So that was well, the Russia was strong, and the West wasn't prepared at that point for that information side of war. Like, and Russia could maybe guide the narrative that, well, it's not that obvious. Maybe there is civil war in Ukraine, and like that wasn't framed as that wasn't at that time as obvious as it is today, when Russia like put their gloves off. We are going to denazify, demilitarize, and essentially like occupy Ukraine. At that time, they were more. They weren't so open about their intentions. So probably that's why West reacted softly. But that's just an excuse. But in reality, if had they reacted more hard, and had they, especially like no one's saying about military support. I mean, no troops on the ground should be in Ukraine, but at least, at the very least, not to allow Putin to build his army, to get the equipment for his like missiles that will eventually land in Ukraine. And those countries, which were actually heavily involved in peacemaking deals between Russia and Ukraine. So it's crazy. And one and also it's one more kind of story who like an ambassador to Germany, Ukrainian ambassador to Germany, told that like during the first hours of war, he had a conversation with the financial minister of Germany, asking him like we need help, we need weapon right now, like let's do something. And the whole vibe from financial minister, who is like in Germany, he's really high level politician, was like, you get only like 2-3 days until the regime changed, so we'll eventually deal with them. So how cool is this situation? So yeah, I think and the Nord Stream, obviously, like it was like really, it was obvious that some Europeans were dependent on Russian resources, and they prioritized their like economic well-being over our people's lives. And after the war like broke out in East, and after the occupation of Crimea. So yeah, that's how I feel. But nevertheless, I think we should, as the nation, be very much appreciative towards what the West, especially as the US and UK, is doing right now, especially in the last week with the land lease. So I think that maybe for good that it went out like this, because now we feel that we can, like we've had this problem with us Ukrainians want to live peacefully for centuries, and Russia is like constantly, now you cannot live independently in your own way. We have to just like be stuck in the Middle Ages with us. And that's like, now we feel that we have this chance to finally, like, we want to live in liberal democracy. We want to have our rights. We want to live like decent human life, and that's our choice. So like, and we as a community want to do it, like, and we want to fight for that. And that's, it looks like finally that's our chance to do it for us and for future generations. So maybe it's a heavy price, of course, but maybe that's for good.
Those are very wise words. Thank you for sharing each one of your experiences. It helps us understand. We get a very limited, we have corporate control over our media, so we are given limited information unless you hunt for it. So you giving us your perspectives from where you are, and you're in Kyiv, we understand and can have a greater respect for what you're enduring currently. But at the same time, you're giving people lots of hope, because as unfortunately you stated, Maxime, Germany and others were anticipating just a 3-day walkover, and the brave people of Ukraine with the weapons in hand have taken a toll that would make most armies think otherwise. So thank you for your dogged determination, and we look forward to a day when we can celebrate and your democracy and your freedom. With that, I will go over to our next question, which will be by Councilmember Brian Buckley. Councilmember Buckley.
Thank you, and good evening, gentlemen. Thank you for taking the time to speak with us and to teach us. And to echo everyone else on this council, we are beyond impressed with your bravery and your fighting spirit. That doesn't bring much comfort from us being in our, safety here in America, and you guys are out there living this nightmare. But it is inspiring to see how you guys are moving and how you guys are keeping up this fight and defending your home. This is going to be a two-part question. I served in the special operations side of the United States military, and I do have some friends who are currently in Ukraine right now assisting. So my follow-up is going to be part of what they are telling me, and they've been saying on open source networks like CNN International. But for you right now, what are your 3 biggest concerns that you have at this moment? And not to read, if we just want to keep the order going, or Brogan, how you guys want to do it?
Yeah.
Yeah, I can start. Well, actually, one of my concerns refers to what Etienne said about corporate control over the media in the United States, and though the lack of the information. About this, I have actually a concern that because there is a lack of trust, obviously, from Western citizens of different countries to some central and corporate media. There is a problem that Russian propaganda goes through the different media, which are local or social media, and they work very much with the fake news. So this is something we had to deal during the revolution and the war in 2014 and further. So so much time we had to spend on this actually during all these years, but yet the Western community is still pretty I don't know, open to Russian propaganda, and most of it actually, as I see, is going through not central or corporate media, because we actually here are we have a lot of friends who works with CNN or BBC or Al Jazeera and so on and so forth. So for sure they have their agenda, that's no problem. But much worse goes when you go into, I don't know, YouTube or Instagram or Twitter, especially on the West, because we've been monitoring it, and it's awful. So that's my first concern, probably. The second one, but the main one, probably, my concern is about the people who are right now on the occupied territories, because what is happening there is a disaster. They are deporting people. They go through the so-called filtration camps, So and then the families are separated and they go to different parts of Russia. So what we this is also not the worst story, because a lot of people are just killed on the streets because of the resistance or because of no reason, because actually what we deal with is really a genocide, because the genocide is when they are speaking about it publicly, that Ukraine, there is no such nation as Ukraine, and they are doing it physically. They destroy us. So that's what we deal with. So that are my concerns. And the third concern probably is if we gonna build, a new some kind of a new security order, global security order, because as we can see, the one we had has failed. When in the middle of Europe, a huge country can just attack their neighbor in 2022, it means that really the previous system has failed. So I do believe we're gonna go through it with a new security system, and I don't want it to be, something like we have with a question of global warming, that we cannot solve because of the interests of the big capital, but which leads us to a total disaster. That's my concerns.
Thank you. We'll go to Bogdan.
Yep, there you go.
Yeah, I totally agree with Nazari and every word he said. This is also, yeah, that also concerns me a lot. So I have like more general concerns, and the thing that concerns me most is what can I do personally to make the war stop as soon as possible, because after it all started, like I think like most people of Ukraine have a lot of inner hatred towards Russian people, and we have to release it something, and the best way to release it is doing something and like make it an activity. So, and the other thing that concerns me most is how to help people that have suffered from this like stupid war, and how to help civilians, how to help, what can we do to help the refugees, to help people who are still in blocked in the cities where they're bombed like every day and are striving to survive. This concerns a lot. And the other thing that also concerns me is how to help the veterans and how to help the people who defend our country, how to show solidarity with them. And yeah, that's pretty much all. Another thing is maybe how to keep staying focused all this time, because the war is very exhausting thing, and all that is happening is changing every minute, and like with all the things happening. Yeah. What about you, Max?
Yeah, well, couldn't agree more with what the guys was saying. For me, I guess like the most concerning thing right now is people who are in the occupation right now, especially like you've heard what's going on in Mariupol. That's probably the brightest example of Russians. I don't know, like they are brutal tactics, like maybe you heard it, that the what's the word was the guy the general who bombed Aleppo, he had some like nickname.
Yeah, he had some really brutal tactics in Syria.
Yeah, so essentially what he was doing. Yeah. So actually, yeah, exactly, just like ruining civil buildings methodically, like one after one. And we have our soldiers there, and also on the steel worker, the civilians are there, and they don't have access like to, like they run out of water and of food, and a lot of them are wounded, and they need to get some, they need to be taken care of, but they are encircled. The Ukrainian forces cannot get to them. There are like some negotiations. Maybe Turkey will, if there is political will from the Russian side, to allow them to be evacuated to the third like country, that would solve this. But yeah, as what Nazari said, that the estimates is now 1 million people was deported to Russian, the most depressing regions, and that would just be a whole new fight to get them back afterwards. So while we are like, although the missile can like reach Kyiv any minute, and like it happened just yesterday, but we are relatively safe in comparison to those, like we are totally safe in comparison to those who live closer to the front line, because as you know, Battle of Kyiv is now over, and like Kyiv can be hit only with missiles, and especially for those who are under occupation, like in Kherson, for instance, they had lists of veterans of the ATO, which was anti-terrorist operation. Like essentially that's the war from 2014 and onwards. They had the lists, they got the veterans, and they executed them, or just like imprisoned them. Activists, so they wanted to kill to kill that like protest element in our society, to make us all like voiceless.
Yeah.
And that has been actually their tactics for centuries, if we dug deeper. But that's the primary concern. What's the fate, and like how long shall those people suffer? And that leads to the second question. But I think that with the whole support of international community, especially with weapons, like we've been saying, we need weapons, and it looks like it's settled now, and we will get as much weapon as we need, and that's like a really good news for us. And that means probably that well, we always believed that we will win, and now everybody else believe that victory is going to, like, good is going to prevail on evil, and this war will result in Russia's defeat. The only question is how much lives of our soldiers would that cost? Because as you probably know better than us, that like to make the offensive operation is much more dangerous for people on the ground that to defend. We've been doing just defensive operations right now, and how much people lives will be ruined. And the next concern is, and the third, the final concern would be, after all this over, how much time would it take for nations, and especially for those people, to heal and to be able to live their normal lives? Because as from what I know, how trauma works, you don't experience it during the events. You have to wait some time, and then it bursts. But it's not the issue of, well, we'll have some sort of collective trauma, when like everybody's had some similar experience, and we'll just need to, I don't know, answer some questions in our lives. How do we live from now on? And that might take some time. I don't know what will be with our economy. I don't think that will be like the most important issue. I think we'll figure it out. Ukrainians like very have good work ethics, I would say. So that would be less a problem than like how do we heal, and like maybe how much, like 10 years, maybe 15 years till like our people could live happily. I don't know.
Yeah.
That's hold on before you follow up that, Brian. I just wanted to let our audience know and to respond to Bogdan's response is that after our questions, we would like our Ukrainian gentleman to ask us questions, because we are also survivors, both war and non-war alike. We each have our own post-traumatic stress, and we can give our answers to somewhat to your questions, because each one of those they're really kind of personal questions in the sense, because each person survives trauma in their own different way. However, many of us have used cannabis and other natural medicines and found that helped us heal. But of course, that's a discussion we'll have shortly. So I just wanted to clarify that we are going to have that discussion further on in this discussion. So Brian, carry on.
Excellent. Great point. So gentlemen, again, everything I'm saying to you is open source. It's out in public domain. I have a former boss and a friend of mine. He's in Kyiv right now, leading a group called the Mozart Group, which is comprised of 100 special operators from America, Australia, and the UK. His name's Andy Milburn. Seems like you guys might know who the Mozart Group is. And, you know, one of the things and the duties that we have as American citizens is we are the government, and it's our job to challenge the elected officials to ensure they're meeting our intent. And he is growing more and more frustrated with our current administration. And what he's been saying is, he's like, it's great. They're sending billions of dollars of weapons over to Ukraine. They get in through the Western corridor, but that's where it stops. And he goes, I'm literally staring at a warehouse with a bunch of US equipment that cannot make it to the front lines because they don't have the logistical support. And he's like, I'm growing more and more tired of our administration saying we don't want to upset the Russians. He's like, Vladimir Putin responds with force. He's like, when we shot down one of their planes, he backed off. When they bombed the chemical weapons in Syria the second time, we responded. We killed 30 Russians. He backed off. He's like, I fought ISIS. He was in charge of the Combined Joint Special Operation Task Force that destroyed the caliphate in Western Iraq and part of Syria. He said ISIS was brutal. He goes, the Russians are worse. And he is just growing more and more frustrated that we're not doing enough. And everyone feels good that we're sending weapons over, but they're not getting to where they need to go. So what are your concerns if we do not pick up this logistical train to get this over to the front lines where it's needed? And kind of a caveat too, he literally just put in a request to go take the Mozart Group to go rescue the steel workers who are trapped inside that compound. He put a formal request to the Ukrainian government, and he said, hey, it's like Wayne Gretzky. You miss 100% of the shots you don't take, so I'm throwing a Hail Mary, but he's like, enough's enough. We got to kind of help out here. So I'm concerned about logistical support to get the weapons to the front, to actually finish this thing with the Russians. How are you guys feeling on that, being there on the front line? Am I accurate in what I'm saying here?
I may start. Well, I feel like there are some, definitely there are some problems logistically. Like we were not prepared for that amount of that amount of weapon. To like, it's again, it's not that something you have your infrastructure ready and like it's been constantly destroyed by the Russians, and like it takes some time to figure out. But I think the will is here to make it like to the front lines, because yeah, like the whole society holds our government accountable right now. And I can assure that like if anyone, like, it will be political suicide to prevent weapon to come to the place where it's needed, like purposefully. So even not for Ukrainians, even for German chancellor, it's political disaster to prevent the help. So I think eventually it will be there. Like, yeah, great. It would be great if we had it already there, but that will be fixed, I think. and the Mozart group, like their desire to go and like to do the job, that's astonishing. That like if they were able to pull that through, that'd be like a script for a Hollywood movie, I'd say.
Nazari or Bogdan, did you want to speak to that?
Well, yeah, there might be some logistical problems for sure, because actually the war is a mess. But I should say that what I also see is a huge logistical achievements that we have right now in Ukraine. Like actually, what we couldn't imagine before. Like right now, there are no impossible things in Ukraine that you cannot do, or you cannot connect with someone. So, for example, how the humanitarian aids go into Ukraine. So it goes through all the Europe. And it gathers in different cities from different communities, and it goes but for sure there is also a problem about the weapon, because we do not have instructors here from the countries where we have the weapon. That's really awful that we see that first stage of us getting the weapon is that Ukrainian guys are going into this or that country. They train, and it takes time, and then they when they are trained, they can train the others. So it's a long process, and we for sure we would like to see it go much quicker. And what we would like to see, is that because we are fighting alone actually in this war. Like we would like to see the support, and we really appreciate people all over the world who came here to fight with us. And yeah.
Bogdan?
Absolutely, I totally agree with the guys. And when I add that, yeah, me personally, I don't think that there will be problems with logistics. Maybe there will be problems with like bureaucratic procedures, because there are still a lot of like papers in Ukraine, paperwork, and a lot of structures that that are responsible for different things. So maybe with this, but I think that every weapon that our partners and friends are giving us, it will be delivered to the right place. Yeah.
Thank you very much. Appreciate your input there. Next up is Council Member Michael Krawitz. Council Member?
Thank you. So I want to expand the question just slightly to include the United Nations as well. So the question is, what would you like to see the United States, the EU, and NATO members do now? And given the timeline for everyone watching, or maybe watching it later, the Secretary General, I guess it is, of the United Nations was visiting and looking around Ukraine and trying to figure out what can be done to end this war. And Russia took that opportunity to lob a couple of missiles into the capital of Ukraine, right into Kyiv. So this question really is very pressing now, I think.
Nazari, would you like to start?
Well, partly I probably already answered this question when I told about my concerns about new security system. What we saw yesterday, this attack on Kyiv, just when it really shows that Russia has no respect to United Nations as an institution. and it's a way to show that this is a weak institution right now. So I would like I would like to see this institution getting stronger and getting braver, actually, because we see how slowly the processes are right now. So we had to actually ask for the weapons for 2 months. And only now we are starting to receive it. Yet, actually, we were really asking you to shelter our sky. The West and the democratical countries. To shelter our sky, and we still do not have a sheltered sky, and we are open for missile attacks, and this is something that ruining our country. So I would like to see the Europe, the West, and the United Nations that I would like to see the understandings that we are alone in this fight here. That's our soldiers and someone who joins them are fighting here, and but we want to see full involvement of the civilized world in this war, giving us the weapon, the support, economical support, also because it matters a lot, and also how the refugees are in Europe or in different countries, how are welcome they. So we would like to see total involvement, because it's not only the war of Ukraine. We have to understand that that's unprecedented war in the middle of the Europe. It might concern in the nearest future not only us.
Bogdan.
I agree with Nazari, and the thing that I would like the world community to do is to close our sky as soon as possible, as it was requested, and as we asked, we have started to ask about it since the war started, and it has been more than 2 months now. So, and still none of the citizen of Ukraine considers himself in total security, because every minute a missile can strike in your window. So, and for the organizations like UN, I think it would be pretty much rational to do some kind of a peacekeeping military organization, and to help us with this, protecting our borders and helping with the humanitarian crisis, which is enormous now. Max, what can you say?
Yeah, well, that's pretty first, I think the direction which, if we see the dynamics, how rhetorics around Ukraine is evolving, that's a positive dynamics. We're getting more and more support, and we get more complex weapon systems. And now, in the first few days, NATO was more afraid of Russia and was nuclear threat. Now it looks like they are less afraid of nuclear threat, and they are declared that they are ready for the same appropriate answer should that happen. Hopefully not that no winners in that war, but first of all, I think that's moving in the right direction. Me personally, what I really would want to see is the NATO forces just doing an operation, and in 1 hour the whole the whole army which attacks Ukraine on Ukrainian soil is just ruined, and it would make much easier for us to regain control over our territory. I understand that's not going to happen, but still, for the United Nations, that was also like, you know, when the war started, the very moment there was a Security Council meeting, and that says something like about how powerful the organization is, that like the whole aim of which is to prevent war. That was like the idea on which UN was based. So there should be like some work on that, on the security architecture in the world post this war. The West understand that it's actually like Putin is not challenging Ukraine. He challenges the Western like way of life, and like he's pissed because Ukrainians want like share the Western values of democracy and like of freedom, and like it's something he cannot accept. And yeah, the way we see it, he had him succeeded in occupation of Ukraine, he would probably move to the Baltic states, and that would mean confrontation with NATO. So the NATO understands that like it's, well, not NATO, but the whole world understand that it's in the world interest for us to win this war and to prevent this like unprovoked aggression from success.
Absolutely. That, without a doubt, is something we want to see, and we hope you are very successful in. And thank you for your perspectives. Next up was Council Member Gage Amsler, who has a question for the group.
Unmute. Hey guys. Again, thanks guys for joining us. Everyone is very appreciative of your time, support, and bravery, and it's commendable to just be the change and be the need that we need to for that connection, because this is really what we're all about, right? Is connecting, and I think that connecting through this gives us such a wider perspective and understanding that it draws us in even more. Me personally, I try to stay away from war. I've spent enough time in it, so I'm sure Brian probably sticks to it more than I do. And but giving us this understanding is really wonderful, and I'm really drawing a lot from this guy. So I appreciate this a lot more than what you think. So I spent 8 years in Iraq and Afghanistan. And part of that, a huge part of that was part of their provincial reconstruction team, the PRT teams. And what that meant was that we were really involved in helping the reconstruction of war, and really helping the Department of State get involved in the reconstruction, and a lot of meetings, a lot of things took place. And through that, there was a lot of resources that were allocated in many different ways and many different opportunities. Probably more bad than good. And through that, once peace, once treaty, let's think a little forward, right? Once peace and once treaty, hypothetically, happens, once we have peace, once we have a treaty, once something happens like that, some form of international protectorate, right? And I think what we would like to try to understand is how can hemp and cannabis fit into the post-conflict reconstruction period that will follow this war. Once this reconstruction happens, and once we are moving forward with that, how do you think that we can introduce hemp and cannabis to help rebuild and reconstruct your area and your people and your culture? That's a really important question. I'd like to know that.
Maxime.
Yeah, I might start. That's a good question. Thank you. And that's actually what the same question asked for us as a movement. We've been doing this like advocacy stuff like before the war started, even before 2014, and there has been request for for medical cannabis for a lot of patients, and then like the huge strata of society, which is like the veterans emerged because of like the war began, and now what we think is like we could only estimate how many veterans we will have, and given the sacrifices they made as a group of people, like they're the most respected. I would say nowadays they are the most respected group, and like I think there is political will to prioritize their needs, and us as like Ukrainian society should definitely like provide some ability for them to recover to recover from the horrors they witnessed during the war. So what we think in post-war, the most important thing would be to heal our people, and that's how medical cannabis can help. It's not a magic pill. It won't work for everyone, but given like the benefits from it and risks for a lot of people, that would work. And like we should be able to like help a lot of people who actually sacrificed for us, for if not their actions, if not their will to risk their lives, we might not have our country, our society. We might be already that repressed, or like somewhere in Siberia in the filter camp. So that's how cannabis fits in post-war. And economics is also a huge part of it. I mean, like we have agriculture is a huge sector of Ukrainian economy, and hemp is also of interest as a source of material, as the carbon dioxide kind of, you get some credits for that, like when you grow it, so it consumes carbon dioxide. That's the positively affects climate change. So I think, like, I'm by no means I'm an expert in that, but I think that it can also help recover economy, and like that. For me personally, I wouldn't want just like to have the donations from West, or just to have this seized, like, Russian assets. I think that not in a monetary form, but rather as an investment in the economy, so we could have like sustainable future, and like I think cannabis can be a part for that like industry as well.
Nazari.
Yeah, thanks. Well, I totally agree with Max for sure. Like, the cannabis is something we probably will unfortunately need for a lot of people after the war. So a very lot of, like, not only veterans but the civilians would need the treatment of PTSD. So it's for sure it's going to be a big problem for us. I don't want really to dramatize it. Like, I'm sure we're gonna go through it, but I believe that cannabis is something that we will for sure need for this, yeah, and economically for sure we need the investments, and we are a big country with a huge land, so, and with a huge agriculture sector, as Max said. So this is something that would have to will help to rebuild the economy. So actually, when we started our campaign, Cannabis Stands with Ukraine, that's something that we tried to work on and to go internationally with this question. We are trying to connect with you and with other communities from Canada, from United Kingdom, from Poland, and from different European countries. So we try to reach the companies, the business, the experts who would help us to proceed with this question. Yeah.
Bogdan.
Yeah, just want to add that that cannabis, as for me, fits perfectly into the post-conflict economy, as it is a huge industry with the billions of dollars. And regarding the rebuilding of economy, it's a perfect chance to do that, considering that Ukraine has like more than 70% of the fertile fields of the 70% of the whole land in Ukraine, and they're most fertile in the world. So, well, this is very rational to do that. And considering that even before the war, there were like 2 million people estimated who needed cannabis-based medicine. After the war, I think it will be up to 10 million or something, because of all the post-traumatic syndromes that people are experiencing. We have like up to 10 million displaced, like including the refugees and internally displaced. It's up to 10 million people. It's a lot. And the main thing is to heal the collective trauma, which all of our people eventually will be experiencing. Yeah, that's my point.
Thank you for that. And yes, I can also see hemp as a industrial material, what they're making from the industrial blocks. On top of that, I used to import Eastern European hemp, and so I know that Ukraine has a long history with hemp and growing damn good hemp at that. So I definitely see that as a sustainable future to not only rebuild your economy, but your homes, and as we're going to talk about here in a little bit, your people and their minds, because of the hellish reality that they're going for it. So we'll follow up here with another question. This will be our final question, and after this, we're going to listen to your questions to us, because as you know, we have our own experiences being in the military and our cannabis usage as well. We have representatives from the Vietnam War. I'm from the Gulf War. We have Greater War on Terror, as well as we have peacetime veterans. So we have all different perspectives to help. So with that, I'm going to turn this over to the George Armstrong, council member.
Thank you, Etienne. And thank you for being here tonight, gentlemen. We've asked you a lot about the political and what countries should do, but what can we as a council, as a group of just American veterans who are trying to do something with this plant around the world, what can we actually do to help you guys? What would you guys think?
Bogdan, your mic's open, so why don't you start us off?
Oh, okay, sorry, forgot to switch stuff. Okay, well, first of all, thanks for this event. This is already a very huge support for us to the need to be heard, and just to spread our message would be like the basic support that everybody can provide to us. Then just spread the message that about the situation that's going on in Ukraine, about the war, about the need for the patients and other people, groups in need for cannabis-based medicine. Yeah, that's pretty much it. And of course, we would be grateful for any connections with other similar organizations, cannabis like advocacy organizations. Like we will be grateful for connections with industry sector, with the companies who can help financially as well. And we will be grateful for all the social connections that we can get just to be heard and to spread the message. Also, the other thing you can do is to share your experience with the Ukrainian friends, with the Ukrainian authorities, maybe write letters to our ministries of health and economy, like persuading, just explaining the benefits of cannabis-based medicine and the positive impact it can do regarding the rebuilding of our economy. Yeah, that's the thing.
Thank you. Maxime.
Yeah, so I think you're helping, just like as we have this call, that's a tremendous help. Just have a platform, respected platform, to be able to share the message. That's a huge help. And obviously the work some members of council doing in the UN, that's like some level of expertise which would be very much required by our politicians. So basically we have this like front with, like, we work with our legislators to enable people have access to medicine, and that's where we would need like experience of other people's. We would need to maybe to fix some, connect some of your stories with our media, so Ukrainians heard how that can, like, what's the experience of the other countries, how it's done on the West, what can we use from that model, how can our veterans benefit from it. It's not only about only about cannabis, of course. I think cannabis is just a part of that treatment, but it's more of a, like, of the whole process, how people get better from what they experienced. And networking is a huge part of it, because the more people would pressure our government, that's like the more chances we have that, well, like, it's not a question for me whether we will have it. We will have it. It's the question of when, and like how easy it would be for a regular person to get access to medicine that they need. So yeah.
And Bogdan. Oh, pardon me, Nazari, sorry. It's 3 in the morning there. Sorry, you'd think it was 3 in the morning here, but my apologies.
Yeah. Yeah, well, probably the guys said pretty everything, but the only thing I might just add, like, because I also like some kind of a direct action. So you can just make a poster, or I mean, take our poster and put it in, try to put it in the nearest dispensary or on the streets. So we have it, this poster with the Ukrainian flag and cannabis there. So I would love to see such representation abroad, actually. Yeah.
Thank you. We had a question come up from David Borden. Pearson, you're going to ask the question?
Yeah. In regards to military age males, are you seeing that individuals are picking up arms, as young as what we noticed in Iraq, which was 77 to 77, and is that playing any real consequence in the war?
Let me take that. So,
Thank you.
so essentially that whole well, you might have seen that picture, that video from 25th, I guess, in one of the Kyiv districts when they like were handing over the AKs. That was like in the early rush of war, when we were not sure like if Kyiv is going to fall. Like during the first days, like people walked on, and another friend of ours, they were just like, we were just arrived to the Kyiv civic military administration to do some volunteering, and one of the, by the way, is it okay that I say this? Okay.
You can curse. It's okay.
Yeah, please do.
I mean, one of the tasks was,
I had a branch in front of me while I was asking the questions, so you can go.
awesome. I mean, that was one of the tasks they had, was just like to go to some gun store and then just get some like hunting guns because like everybody was happy to have a weapon. Nowadays, like it's more, I don't know, stable situation right now, and more only like professional military people, they serve in the on that areas. We joined, like originally we joined the territorial defense, which like aims to protect the territory where you reside, and like but those who deployed to the eastern side and to the southern side, they were like more or less, they had experience. Those who are on the front line, they had experience pre-war, and like it's not the question of number of soldiers, it's more a question of how many of them are trained to use the equipment, especially the equipment which is coming through right now. So I wouldn't say that this situation is similar to like to Iraq, when people like 17 you get AK and you get deployed to the front line. If that answers the question.
Yes, quality over quantity. Michael Green wanted to follow up.
Yeah, thank you, Etienne. And well, I'm just sitting here. It is quality over quantity, but 100 questions come to mind. Maxime and Brogdon and Nazari. Number one, just thank you for sharing this during what you're going through. So from the heart, it's just amazing to be impacted by this. The question of no-fly zone or safe skies has come over a couple of times. Some of us in our conversation have equated, and apparently our government equates the notion of instituting a no-fly zone to protect your airspaces is almost an equivalent to putting boots on the ground. From the other side, meeting from Putin, we're hearing the nuclear saber being rattled. I don't know that this question can be really answered. Do you think that is truly a genuine possibility? If we were to stand up and support you, take it further, European Union, other nations in the United States, Canada, help assure a no-fly zone, do you think that might truly result in nuclear war, or do we stand up to what I think might be the nuclear bluff?
Well, I think that actually the sheltering sky is not entering the war. This just only means that we are not attacked with the missiles. It's not a question of someone entering the war, but you have to understand that we are comparing to Russia a very small country, which is fighting alone against a huge territory and huge army. What we want to see is involvement of the West as much as possible, and I think that sheltering our sky would actually prevent the nuclear war and nuclear attacks, because in a situation when we feel right now support from the West with the heavy military I don't know, vehicles and all the stuff, tanks and so on, we feel that we can win this war somehow. Yeah, okay. And but what if we start winning? What will happen? Wouldn't be the reaction, the nuclear attack? That's something should be done already in the start of the war. So again and again, we are asking for something that should have been done before. I really would appreciate if the I don't know, American citizens and community would support this message. And actually, from the first days of war, we really appreciate that the nations, not the governments, but the nations were the first who supported and showed their solidarity with Ukraine on the streets of the all cities in Europe and in many cities in the United States. I think this is something that would prevent the war, nuclear attack. Sorry.
Bogdan or Maxime, did you wish to respond to that as well?
Bogdan, you're welcome to go ahead if you'd like.
Yeah, I agree with what Nazari said. And just to add, the world community who's willing to help with closing the sky, every country, it does not have to enter the war. It just needs to pass the needed equipment to Ukraine. That's all, just to pass the jet fighters and the anti-craft military equipment, and actually, yeah, as they say, close the sky and we will do the rest. So
Thank you for that. If I may, ATN, just, as Brian has mentioned and others here, it appears every time someone has stood up to Putin and pushed back, they have backed up, meaning the Russians have backed up. Gentlemen, thank you so much for your perspective and answers.
Pearson had a quick follow-up, and then we're going to take questions from our guests.
Thank you, Etienne. So really with the question of military age males, is there a hesitation at all with the Russian troops if they know they are going into a place where they will be combating women and children type defenses, or are they just no holds bar?
Well, there is such a myth that they didn't know where they are going, and this is probably something they were told to say when they were caught by the Ukrainian army, and that's what they've been saying on the camera all the time, that they didn't know where they are going. But we recognize that support of the war which exists in Russian society and support of their president and their totalitarian leader. So I am pretty sure that most of the soldiers, they knew where they're going, and much more like I understand that there was a huge I don't know, like these people hated Ukrainians a lot because and I cannot even understand how they could do what they did in Bucha, Hostomel, Irpin, and all the cities, Chernihiv. So all the crimes they did there, they are horrible, and this is enormous. This is really something that goes beyond our imagination. So it's really like a genocide they are doing there. So when after they are caught by Ukrainian army, they say that they didn't know where they are going. So first of all, I do not believe them, and second, it's not an excuse for what they did.
So it doesn't seem like there's a hesitation whether who they are or not combating is what you're saying, from what you can tell.
Sorry, I didn't catch the question.
It seems as if they're not. There's no they're not distinguishing who or what they're combating. It doesn't matter. They're just going through it as if everyone's a combatant in every city and town that they go through. So there isn't a distinguishing characteristic between them fighting a actual formidable military force compared to a village trying to protect themselves. It wasn't really a question. I'm
Okay, let's move on to questions from our guests at this point. One of the things that you were talking to earlier, Nazary and Bogdan, you were talking about cannabis and how does cannabis, or what to do with your citizens once the war hopefully comes to a quick and conclusion. So what questions can we help answer to you? And guys that are on the call, please raise your hand to be recognized so we can keep order while we respond to our guests. Go ahead, Bogdan.
Yeah, just want to ask you guys to share maybe quickly in 2 words your the cause why you're using cannabis and the how it helps you, how it heals your traumas.
Al, let's see. I'm going to start off with Al Byrne. He is a Vietnam veteran, so I'm going to start with our senior members and give them an ability to respond to that. So, Al, how does cannabis help you?
Etienne, thank you so much for giving me the old guy title, but I missed the question. Could you repeat it, please?
They're asking, how does cannabis help you and your traumas that you have experienced? You have been a guide to me and others around the world. Al started Patients Out of Time, which is one of the original medical conferences around putting people in touch with experts around cannabis. And of course, he has his own experience. He was an officer in Vietnam. And carry forward, Al.
I was in the Navy for 5 years before I was ever sent to Vietnam. I went there as advisor. I went in 70, 71 when things were, relatively speaking, not as brutal as it had been, but it still wasn't fun. But I did not use Vietnam. I did not use cannabis prior to Vietnam although I've certainly seen it in my college years, high school years. And I did not use cannabis in Vietnam. But as an officer, I had 100 men or so and 20 officers, and I observed them as I think I was supposed to. And I drew my conclusions and my judgments as their boss as to who I wanted to have do what and when. And it became pretty obvious to me that the troops that I led that were using cannabis, in Vietnam, we call those people heads. And then the troops that were using alcohol, and in Vietnam, we call them juicers, were two totally different sets of responsibility on feet. And I chose as an officer to trust more my sailors. I was in the Navy that was on, or that were using cannabis as a drug of release, as opposed to the sailors that were using alcohol as a drug of release. Release from what? From the fucking war. And I judged neither of them harshly, but I didn't use it. But leaving Vietnam, surviving, thank you, and getting back to the United States, which for me was Hawaii for 4 years, my sister, observing me for a month or so, said, hey, you know, you're pretty fucked up and you need cannabis. And that was some, 50 years ago, gentlemen, and I believe I've used cannabis to help me with my anxiety and my sleep and my appetite and my pain virtually every day of my life since my sister handed me that first joint in Hawaii in 1971 or whatever the hell it was. So, and then in my future as sort of an advocate for cannabis medically here in the United States, I have talked on the radio or face-to-face with, I don't want to sound too boisterous here, but thousands of veterans, men, women, pick a conflict, not always US. We've talked to Canadian guys and Australian guys, et cetera. And I have never heard a soldier or sailor or Marine or Coast Guardsman or Air Force, anybody ever say that cannabis did them a disservice. And virtually they all said, damn, I'm glad I used cannabis. And I can just tell you from whatever the hell I just said, 50 years of using cannabis every day, it has done me, it's been wonderful. It has made me feel good about myself, given me confidence that I wouldn't have had. It lets me sleep. God, I can sleep 8, 9, 10 hours a night. And I don't dream. And that in itself gives everybody a good mental health capacity. So I would highly urge, when this is going on over there, like now, and certainly when this is over, because everything's over, you stay with cannabis. You've done yourself and your country a favor by being who you are, by being advocates for this medicine. You're doing good. Keep doing it. It's not a bad thing. It's always good. And just as, again, 50 years, Vietnam, it's kept me, and I can't tell you how many in my peer group alive for a variety of reasons. So you stay with it, guys.
Councilmember Krawitz.
Thank you, Etienne. So I guess I should answer that question in two different ways. One about myself, and then one about others that I've witnessed in much the same way Alice is described. We work together on these projects, but in tandem. So he's actually met a lot of people that I haven't met over the years, and I don't doubt his numbers. I am a disabled vet, but I actually got hurt in a motorcycle accident while serving over on the island of Guam, USA, where America's day begins. Half a day, Guam, USA. And I actually broke my right hip. I lost my spleen, nicked my pancreas. I chipped my skull and fractured my arm. And I've had, I guess, 13 or so surgeries to put me back together again. And in that saga of all those surgeries and procedures, I've had dozens of different medications and treatments. And this actually started in the 1980s. So, you know, although medical marijuana was already a thing, I guess, since the 70s, I didn't know anything about it. I hadn't learned about medical cannabis yet, really, until everybody else did, basically in the 1990s, 1996 with Proposition 215 in California, really. And that's such a tragedy, really, I talk about sometimes, because my dad suffered through chemotherapy treatment back in the 1970s, and marijuana was everywhere. Any kid on the college and high school campus could have gotten cannabis. And my dad suffered in pain on the porch without access to it. As a World War II vet, suffered through the chemotherapy and I didn't even know that cannabis would help him. Otherwise, I would have just gone down to the, you know, the school ground and got him some cannabis. It would have been that easy. But at the VA hospital or at the other hospital, he couldn't get cannabis, not then, in the 1980s. So anyway, my treatment, I actually was visiting and finally going on a trip after I got out of the service, a nice world tour, so to speak, of Europe. And I met up with a doctor over there. I didn't even know that they had a cannabis program. I explained to him how cannabis worked for me and how I was taking pain pills and stuff. If you can take less pain pills and take cannabis, I'll give you cannabis as much as you can use. And he suggested I use it as a tea. Of course, when it's as scarce as it is in the United States and in my life, it's much more difficult to have enough for tea. Usually I smoke it in a very, very small amount in a pipe, and that gives me several hours of relief, not quite enough for even a cup of tea. Yeah, the work that I've done, and I want to say that cannabis, for me, like so many other patients that I've met, really does not just dramatically reduce the amount of pain pills that I need, but works better. I mean, you never get that level of pain relief from just the cannabis or just the opiates. For me, you know, that many patients and I, on occasion, when I've had really, really good quality cannabis and was able to get myself in a place where I was able to, you know, alter my lifestyle a little bit, relax and eat a little better, I've been able to reduce my pain medicine to zero. And many patients do reduce their pain pills to zero. However, most, as I understand from the statistics, most patients that use cannabis use it with the pain medicine and use less pain pills. That's the usual scenario. And in that case, that's fantastic, you know, because it's that last pain pill that you overdose on, not the first one. But anyway, the work that we've done nationally, we looked at all the different ways that veterans use cannabis or potentially would benefit from cannabis. And we did sort of a cost benefit analysis and found, at least we were satisfied, that our efforts would be best applied if we worked on cannabis for post-traumatic stress, for the symptoms of treatment of post-traumatic stress. And we worked on that in many, many states, basically creating a tidal wave of effort across the country that has now led to just about every modern medical cannabis access program allowing for post-traumatic stress, and further identifying that as a veterans issue, helping in our hearts and minds to destigmatize the treatment, you know, seeking treatment for post-traumatic stress. When we started, it was being seen as a psychiatric condition, and we detached it from that and reassociated it as a veterans issue, hoping that veterans would stand up for it and not be ashamed or afraid to carry that designation and proudly say, I'm a cannabis user and I'm using it for post-traumatic stress. And I think that gamble paid off, and veterans across the country have done just that. And I think many, many thousands of other patients in each of these states have benefited from that, that are not veterans, and have been able to seek cannabis treatment for post-traumatic stress with less stigma. It's been phenomenally valuable. And again, like Al said, we haven't gotten anyone, not a single clinician has ever said, but we stopped using cannabis in our practice because the benefits no longer seem to outweigh the negative side effects or anything like that. I mean, it may not work for one patient or another under certain circumstances, but compared to the downside of these narcotics and other drugs that are killing veterans and other patients on a daily basis, any of those pills that you can reduce and use cannabis seems to be just an absolute good.
Councilmember Green.
Michael Krawitz, well said and well done, number one. For whatever it's worth, my cannabis use, I actually got around to trying it just before I went to Vietnam. When I got to Vietnam, I found it was endemic. It was everywhere. But my real, and as soon as I had a chance to get, I'm in the Navy, as soon as brown water, as soon as I was able to go ashore in southern Vietnam, I was probably there 5 minutes before I was turned on to cannabis. Now, I actually never smoked a whole lot until I got aboard an ammunition ship back at sea, being transferred, and found that ship was on fire every day. And I was wondering why it appeared to me everybody on the crew was stoned. And everybody on the crew, E5, rank E5 and below, so what's that equivalent to a sergeant and below, nightly, would gather on the fantail of that ship and smoke up. Officers, higher ranking petty officers didn't bother to go back to the fantail. And the only reason that ship probably made it without blowing up is because people were calming themselves, relieving their stress with cannabis. After I got out of the service, 6 years later, my use of cannabis was pretty much became a self-medication as I was introspecting, dealing with my own PTS and trying to understand why it is I didn't fit in, how to deinstitutionalize myself after 6 years of service, etc. Went on to school and did well. I became an advocate just for legalization, and as an attorney, just seeing the social injustice that the laws in the United States and of course in the world, the injustice and the horrors of the war on drugs in the United States, et cetera, spilled over. What Michael's had to say medicinally, and I sit on the board of Patients Out of Time currently, about PTS, cannabis is medicine. The research is coming out. There's so much truth in it. And I would recommend to you that if you have the opportunity, there's a relatively new site opened up about a year ago called Canna Keys, CANNAKEYS.com, where there is aggregated perhaps about 4,000 pieces of well-vetted, well-read and thought about research emerging as cannabis re-emerging medicine, if you will. So that's something to keep in mind. Of course, my brother, Brian Buckley, through his work with Hellman Valley Growers, created the Battle Brothers Foundation, and they're engaged work with other organizations, a nonprofit, conducting clinical trials with cannabis for people with PTS. And with that in mind, I'll let it go because perhaps Brian or someone else has something to say on the subject. I will say this too. I'm a yoga instructor, and cannabis does enhance, a little bit of cannabis certainly enhances the quality and the calmness that comes from the practice. And again, thank you, gentlemen, for being here.
And I myself, I suffer from multiple chemical exposures, nuclear, biological, chemical from the Gulf War, from being exposed to lots of chemical tipped rounds, etc. So I suffered from a wasting syndrome. Cannabis for me stimulated my appetite. Not only did it help me deal with my alcoholism and the morphine that they had me on for pain, it got me off of that because it was very easy for them to, here in America, to give you an IV so that they give you a button so you can actually press your own button at any time you feel pain so that you can literally trigger your own morphine to go in your system. Okay, I had one of those switches, and morphine's great if you want to sit and drool all over yourself. I mean, it's great for that. However, I was an artist. I was a creative person. I was a musician. I wanted to be creative. And under morphine and those other pain medications, I had no creativity, much less motivation or drive. So cannabis helped reinstill my drive, my ability to eat, as well as my ability to communicate. So I wasted down to 90 pounds, and I'm double that now easily. But at the same time, it's helped me over the years deal with my I have nerve damage due to the chemical exposure, and then I also suffered 3 heat strokes. So I've had different health complications due to that, just to high heat, etc. So for me, cannabis has become so helpful. I risk my own freedom for the past 23 years, providing it to patients because I can't wait for our government to get in line. So each one of us, not only have we helped ourselves, but we've had to risk our own freedoms in our own country to, one, get access to it, 2, to self-medicate, and then be vilified as criminals because of that, and then fight. We had to become warriors again to fight for our laws in our own country, the same way as you're doing, and as you started before this war, and that you will fight for at the end of this war as well. So that gives you some perspectives. Nazari, you have your hand up, so I'm not sure if you had a follow-up or if you wanted to hear from more of us. Go ahead.
I wanted to ask, you all have seen probably this kiddo from Irpin during the evacuation, when he was asked by the journalist, British journalist, how does he feel, and he said, like, I'm all right, I smoked weed legalized for 20, and he started to ask questions to the journalist, how does things go on with the legalization in her country, in United Kingdom. So I've got a question to you. So the first part of it, partly you have answered it, but maybe you can also stress more on it. The first part is about stigma and how you deal with it also personally, and how did you go through it as a community. And the second part of the question, let me. What's your struggle right now? So what problems do you have, and what problems do you deal with? I'm sure that there are still a lot of problems with the legislation on the federal level and so on, but from the perspective of the veteran community, probably I would ask about this. Thank you.
And great questions. And to kind of for myself, stigma. I was a pre-215 patient. Pre-215 being before 1996, so I was going around talking about my use of cannabis, and I had to be very discreet. Even though I travel with one of the legal patients who receives marijuana from the federal government here in the United States, she could smoke anywhere. Okay, she would actually take it out and smoke in front of the police while they were there. I could not do that because she had paperwork, because she went through the federal courts after 12 years and had paperwork saying, this is my weed, fuck off. I did not have that protection. So for me, I had to there was a stigma that's attached to it, that you have to, if you want to live to fight another day, you have to be very discreet. You have to cover your tracks about where you are, be discreet in where you smoke and how you smoke. Use things like blow tubes to blow the smoke into so that you didn't permeate the air. I learned to use concentrates because I didn't smell if I smoked concentrates, but if I smoked weed, that sort of stayed on me. So I would literally have to bring a change of clothes if somebody was smoking marijuana around me. So that's the type of stigma, because here in the United States, if the police smelled marijuana, I mean, where I grew up in Louisiana, if you were pulled over for speeding or something, the first thing the police asked you was to smell your fingers. And I didn't understand as a kid, they were trying to smell if I was smoking a joint. Okay, so the unfortunate stigma is very deep here in the United States, and as a patient, that is an added post-traumatic stress injury that's happens to all of us patients because it is not normalized. So I've spent 23 plus 30 years trying to do this, and we're not here or where we want to be. However, is today better than yesterday? Yes. Can I work today to make tomorrow better? Absolutely, and that's what we're doing here as a council. So with that, I'm going to go over to Council Member Brian Buckley for your response.
Yeah, it's a great question, and this is going to sound a little bit weird, but stay with me. There's a lot of terrible things about war, but there are a couple benefits that happen from war, and that's usually on the medical side. For example, what we just finished up a global war on terrorism. That lasted over 20 years, and there's debates if it's still going on or not, but really kinetic activity that we were facing in Afghanistan, then Iraq, and then finally what happened in the end of August with Afghanistan. So we were losing a lot of guys and girls were getting hit by IEDs, amputees. So, University of Chicago, Johns Hopkins, they started making some amazing advancements in people who are paralyzed and people who need prosthetics and all that. Well, something that kind of got caught in that undertow, I believe, was cannabis. We have a opiate and suicide epidemic that is raging with our veterans right now. And I would just say from my personal experience, when I started using cannabis, I was shot in combat. I post-traumatic stress and all the other good things that kind of come along with that. Really, the first time I consumed cannabis was the first time my body went to peace. I could finally get some sleep and relax and kind of exercise some demons I was fighting. And I remember when I was telling generals and colonels that I served with what I wanted to do in order to do medical cannabis research on veterans and give information to our Congress so we get approved federally, they kind of looked at me cockeyed, like, well, you're doing what with like weed? I mean, it was just kind of like, that's insane. Well, as time went on and we got approved for our research and all this good stuff, they were the first ones to call up and say, hey, I really think you guys are doing God's work. This is something that needs to get done. So now you're seeing things with, say, Vietnam era veterans who are really living in the drug war days of America. They're starting to come around to cannabis. Some people that I knew who are hardcore anti-cannabis are now understanding it and even using it. And you're seeing it grow and grow and grow, and there's so much public support for it. I think it's over 70% of the public is for veterans getting cannabis here in America. And how bad our political climate is right now, I make a joke, you can't get 70% of Americans to agree Monday falls on a Monday anymore. So it's happening. I just think one of the big hurdles we have to face is our legislators are the ones who make the laws. They get put in office because they get very large donations. And ultimately, you got to kind of help the people out who helped you get you into office. Pharmaceutical companies are very powerful here in the United States of America, and they have a large say in the government. I hate to say this, but in my mind, the way this is going to work, once someone like us on this call, we can prove the benefits of cannabis and pharmaceutical companies can see the way they can monetize it, they're going to buy cannabis companies, and then it will start getting approved in Congress to go federally. And next thing you know, you're going to see cannabis everywhere, and people are going to say, look at how great this is and all that. I hate to say it, and I feel disgusting saying it, but it comes down to the dollar. And I just really think that's what our politicians are, and more importantly, our pharmaceutical companies are waiting on, to see the medical benefits proven and a way they can monetize off of it. Sounds terrible, but that's my personal opinion. I'd say that's the actual policy.
Councilmember Crosby.
Yeah. So I'm unaware of any other council members on the call have ever been an intravenous drug user, but I graduated to heroin intravenously once I got to the VA medical clinic, methadone treatment center. It was absolutely terrible, and honestly, the only thing that got me off it, the thing that I relied on was cannabis, about an ounce a week. Today is a important day for me. someone that I met in treatment actually stabbed herself to death with a kitchen knife in front of her 1-year-old daughter at the time. And she wasn't allowed to use cannabis because she was on the methadone clinic spectrum, where you fail a urinalysis and they kick you off the program for 3 days and you got to deal with it. Yet they had them on, they had her, Kellyanne, on Adderall, still on opiates, still on SSRIs, yet they wouldn't allow her to be on cannabis or use cannabis in by any means, shape, or form. And I truly believe that, you know, last time I saw her, if she was able to get some relief from cannabis, she might have not had done that. And it's terrible that we have to worry about the consequences with a man-made law that makes the individual suffer. And cannabis is something that should be available to everybody, at least first. And if it doesn't work, it should be at least attempted or utilized and tried. I really appreciate y'all being here.
Love you, Pearson. Thank you for sharing. I know that was not easy to share. So yeah, there's we're working currently to the other part of your question, Nazari. The laws, we're working our way through the legislature. Unfortunately, we have a divided Congress, and because of that, we have no unity behind cannabis right now to really pass any real type of legislational change in the short term. There has been bills that get into our houses of representatives and into the Senate, but they seem to can't get past that. On top of that, our current president is not a fan of cannabis. And at the same time, even if it were to pass, I'm unsure he would actually sign something. Because he crafted a lot of the anti-drug war legislation in the 80s. And we understood that. We had to pick between Trump and him. And, you know, that's the reality is, you know, what we have to deal with. And unfortunately, he is of an older generation that is stuck in the drug war mentality. And I hope that your President Zelensky is a little more forward thinking, and especially due to the tragedy that has befallen Ukraine. Hopefully it'll bring some quicker wisdom toward cannabis, and please use us. We're here as your disposal if you want to, and when the time comes, we're here for you, and we want to use our network as well. V.A.C is international, so we want to help our brothers in any way that we can, and our brothers and sisters around the world, and especially you as citizen soldiers that you are, and as you exist, you should have the same benefits and access to medical marijuana that Michael and others helped liberate around the world. So you should at least be falling into that international line of treaty. Michael Green, and then Michael Krawitz.
Hey, Ken, that was so well said. I think I've lost the thread of where I was going with all this. But you know, gentlemen, it is a fight and you lose. And it's a fight and you lose. It's a fight and you lose and you win. And this is a fight worth having. We are talking about a plant. We are talking about something that has emerged from our very planet that inhabits our habitat and we inhabit its. We have an endocannabinoid system. That's our relation to this fundamental plant. How is it not a human right? I am so disappointed, if I may share this, in Joe Biden, who in fact ran kind of on a platform that he was going to take care of this. Bad enough that he hasn't done anything. They can sit there and willfully reject it. So that's why you have to continue the fight. The things that ATN just suggested to you and Brian Buckley, what Pearson has shared, also tells you this thing is transcendental. This is not a United States issue. This is not 50 jurisdictions in the United States trying to work out their legislative bullshit and still don't get the plant, because if they got the plant, most of this shit would have been worked out. So the plant is also enlightening. It is transcendental, but this is a world issue. It's a matter of human right on its fundamental and most basic level. You're entitled to that medicine. You're entitled to the bounty of that plant and the stewardship it demands, what it takes to cultivate it and how it will cultivate you. So that's what I get for getting a buzz on. Sorry, gentlemen, and thank you. It's an honor to be with all of you.
Councilmember Krawitz.
Trouble unmuting there for a second. Sorry. Thanks. So I wanted to follow up on that, on the second point about veterans issues with regard to legislation. We have a bunch of things that we've been working on as Veterans Action Council. I guess the main thing is that our doctors at the VA hospital are federal employees. And this is a rare instance where their lack of free speech as a federal employee actually interferes with their treatment of veteran patients. And I say unique, I'll give you an example. Back in the day when I get out of the service, they were still dealing with the Agent Orange exposure issues. And there was nothing in the law that prevented the VA doctors from standing side by side with the patient, the veteran patient, saying this is what their issues were or whatever. I remember the doctors fighting with the patients for their benefits and all. But with marijuana, nope, can't do anything with it, can't talk about it, can't recommend it. So it's just, you know, a minor thing, I guess, in the world of things. But veterans that are seen at the VA hospital, that's their main doctor. They have a fixed income, many of them older, and they have that budgeted into their budget that's how much they're going to spend or whatever, because they're doctors at the VA. And if they have to leave and set up a whole new relationship with another doctor just to get their medical cannabis recommendation and all that paperwork, it's a burden on them. So that's something that we've been working on. But there are a whole laundry list of issues that are federal matters, you know, like an extreme case that I'll give you as the last example, just to give you an idea of how crazy this stuff can be. A military veteran that somehow made it through the entire term of service without ever being a citizen of the United States could be ejected from the country for using medical cannabis under state law by doctor's recommendation, because it's still illegal under federal law, because it's written into the law that tourists and foreign the travelers are not allowed to come in the country if they use illegal drugs. So anyway, transplant lists, housing, guns issues, all kinds of things that come up for us that are not going to be solved by state law, that we have to solve with the federal law. And then once we finally solve the federal conundrum, how do we approach the rest of the world? How does the United States approach the treaty system that we were so instrumental in passing, that created worldwide drug prohibition? Is an issue that we're starting to look at that's a little ahead of the rest of the movement, I think. And before I give it to Mike, I just want to say that I got to speak at a conference a few years back in Ukraine on cannabis and share, you know, the experience that we've had and stuff. And my trip was just life-changing. I mean, I really, really fell in love with everything about Ukraine, the people that I met, the place that I stayed, and everything that I saw was just really touched my soul. It's just like almost like being in a painting that just had so much history, but yet so much life and so much zest for freedom and you know, the just regular old just enjoyment of the moment. And I got that. I think I got that all the way up to, you know, to this moment. It's never been challenged. I'm truly in love with Ukraine, the Ukrainian people, and I stand with them against this aggression.
Absolutely wonderfully stated and spoken, Michael. Councilmember Byrne. And gentlemen, I look forward to the day when I can come to the Ukraine and we can all share a few joints together, happily. Hopefully over some of Gage's weed. I look forward to trying some of that too. So, Councilmember Byrne.
I apologize to my Ukrainian brothers for the verbosity of my cohorts here. They're mostly Air Force and Army veterans, and I think they're trained right off the get-go to just say a bunch of shit over and over again, be redundant. You know, it's and so again, it's not their fault. Now, I was in the Navy, and we were trained differently. It's like, you don't have time to fuck around, do it and say it and move it. So I would like to go back to the gentleman's question of like 20 minutes ago, which was, you know, what do you think, guys, we should do? What's the answer to the problem that you have dealt with in the United States over these decades? And so I'm going to be very succinct now that I've had my time of jovial banter. What you gotta have is balls, and you got them. You guys have demonstrated that you are willing to be out there, to be activists, to be advocates. You need balls. You go there with them. You're doing fine. Now, the answer to the question, I will live and die with this because it's how I started and how I live, is the answer to the question is, you are dealing with ignorance. The answer then is education. That is that's the Navy answer to your question. On the other hand, Pearson, we're all with you, brother. We hear it, we're here. And by the way, nice shirt.
Thank you, Council Member Byrne. That, as always, clear, succinct, and to the point as you usually are. Maxime, Bogdan, do you have questions for us?
That's maybe like, actually, I wanted to ask a question. What advice do you have for us as a movement in this situation? But I think Al just gave the best advice, and yeah, and all of you actually touched on that topic. So it's more than a question. It's just, I can't really express enough how thankful we are for I'm sorry, for all of your support and like all of your good words, and for us being on our side. We'll definitely have a lot to learn from you. That's like what you've been fighting in the United States and all over the world. Your fight, we can get the experience from there and apply it to Ukraine, although that's a unique situation probably right now. Like, each situation is unique, but we will have a lot of stuff in common. So that experience is of extreme value. So thanks for having us here.
Bogdan, do you have any questions for us before we wrap up?
I just wanted to thank all you guys for solidarity, and for inviting us to this discussion. Very amazing stories you've been sharing, and I hope that our people, our military people, will also soon experience the healing benefits of this plant. Yeah.
Well, not only are you going to learn from us, we're going to learn from you, because what you're doing is different from what we're doing. And, you know, as stated, if there's any way that we can help, I know there was a website, Cannabis with Ukraine, /donate. I know that that's one of the organizations out there. Are there any organizations that people could support or rally around you gentlemen that you would like to speak towards? Nazari?
Please repeat the part, second part of the question, because I didn't take it yet. Sorry.
Oh no, we're just wondering if you had any further questions for us as we wrap things up. If you had any websites or any activist organizations in Ukraine that people can visit and go see and help out in any way, shape, or form to help you and cannabis in Ukraine.
There are different movements, like different initiatives in Ukraine about the cannabis. So there are definitely some businesses already, and they really struggle a bit right now. And also there are cancer organizations, patient organizations. They have also their own fundraising, so anyone can have an opportunity, are welcome to help us or any other trusted funds that are listed by Ukrainian government. It's easy to check, so you can help in any way you are able to. And I would like also to really thank you because as there was one of the first questions, if we feel betrayed, by the West somehow, and well, the answer was pretty like yes, but we actually recognize the people who who show solidarity with us. So this is something very, very important for us, like on the personal level also, and on the political level. So thank you very much for these talks and for this trust and for everything you do, and will help in further. So thank you very much for this opportunity to have a talk with you.
Thank you. And so I will bring it back to gallery, and I will thank our guests, Nazary, Maxim, and Bogdan in Ukraine. Godspeed, be safe, keep your heads down, and we look forward to coming back and sharing with us your experiences. Needless to say, we hope this aggression ends quickly so that you can get on with your lives and your citizens can move on from there. I would like to thank our council members for joining us tonight: George Armstrong, Brian Buckley, Michael Krowitz, Gage Amsler, Wade Laughter, Michael Green, Pearson Kennedy Crosby, Brian H., and of course Al Byrne. And I can't thank everybody enough for taking the time, and this has been an absolutely fascinating conversation with y'all. And thank you everybody for joining us, and we'll be back in 2 weeks with V.A.C. Roundtable number 36. With that, peace and love, everybody.